Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining us for the Tech4ALL Global Summit at Huawei Connect 2021. My name is Harriet, and I am delighted to welcome you to our summit. Our Tech4ALL theme today is Advancing Digital Inclusion with Technology. Now, you might be wondering what this means. We hear a lot about inclusion and technology, but what does this mean to bring the two together? There isn't a simple answer, but by sharing ideas, we can develop a better understanding. Therefore, during this summit, we will hear from an exciting lineup of global thought leaders and experts from UNESCO, IUCN, NGOs, governments, research institutes, and tech enterprises. Today, we look forward to hearing a range of perspectives, insights, and examples covering two topics: driving equity and quality in education, and conserving nature with technology. I would therefore like to invite our first speaker of the summit, Mr. Tao Jingwen, Board Member and Director of the Corporate Sustainable Development Committee for Huawei, to say a few words. Mr. Tao will share his views on how to harness the power of technology to build a more inclusive, intelligent world. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Tao Jingwen.
Distinguished Stefania Giannini, Assistant Director General for Education, UNESCO. Distinguished Dr. Gretel Aguila, Deputy Director General, IUCN. Dear friends, dear guests, hi everyone. Welcome to the online summit, Tech4ALL, Advancing Digital Inclusion with Technology today. I am very pleased to join you in discussing how we can leverage the power of technology to build a more inclusive, intelligent world. Currently, ICTs are accelerating the digital transformation of all industries and continuously changing people's production and lifestyle. We believe ICTs will not only drive economic growth, but also make the environment better and society more inclusive. The future world should be one that is greener and more inclusive. As a technology company, Huawei has always been committed to being a responsible company. Huawei has always managed sustainability as one of its corporate strategies. Huawei's sustainable development strategy includes four aspects: digital inclusion, security and trustworthiness, environmental protection, and a healthy and harmonious ecosystem. Based on this strategy, Huawei also launched the Tech4ALL initiative, which focuses on four areas: driving equity and quality in education, conserving nature with technology, driving inclusion and accessibility in health, and using ICT to boost rural development. Over the past 30 years, Huawei has been committed to the notion of tech for a better planet. We've been working to reduce the carbon emissions of our operations. In addition, we launch innovative products and solutions to help all industries save energy and reduce emissions. Moreover, we are using the ICTs to protect natural ecosystems such as forests, oceans, wetlands, among others, improve the efficiency and effectiveness of conservation efforts. Huawei and IUCN jointly launched a 3-year Tech for Nature project. As a result, technological innovations have been implemented in 5 countries, including Switzerland, Spain, Mauritius, Thailand, and China. This project has also provided digital technologies support for 300 protected areas worldwide. In addition, we cooperated with Rainforest Connection, a non-governmental organization, to deploy Nature Guardian, a sound monitoring system in the forest using technologies such as wireless, cloud, and AI, which effectively prevented illegal logging. By the end of 2020, the Nature Guardian system has been deployed in 22 protected areas around the world. Like the environment, Education is highly relevant to everyone. In education, our goal is to drive everyone access to high-quality education, especially children in remote areas from K to 12. We focus on 3 scenarios: connecting schools, skills on wheels, and empowering the unempowered. Huawei and UNESCO have launched a 3-year open school project in Egypt, Ghana, and Ethiopia. Through ICTs, school education and home education are combined to ensure continuity and quality of learning. In addition, in South Africa, in partnership with RAIN, a local telecom operator, and Click Foundation, a non-profit organization, we have launched the Digital School Project, which aims to help pupils from grade 1 to 3 to improve their English reading skills. So far, this project has connected more than 90 schools, benefiting more than 50,000 children. If you want to go fast, walk alone. And if you want to go far, walk together. We believe that more partners will join us in advancing the TECH4ALL initiative in the future. Welcome to join us to build a more inclusive, intelligent world to ensure no one is left behind in the digital world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tao. As we heard just now, it is absolutely critical that we maximize the value that digital technology can add to enhance education and help the environment. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Stefania Giannini, UNESCO Assistant Director General for Education, to say a few words. In her role, she provides strategic vision and leadership in coordinating and monitoring the implementation of the Education 2030 Agenda, encompassed in the Sustainable Development Goal 4. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Giannini.
Your Excellency, Madame Gretel Aguilar, Acting Director General of the International Union for Conservation of Nature, Your Excellency, Mr. Tao Jingwen, a Huawei board member and chairman of the CSD committee, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to join you to open the second edition of the TECH4ALL Summit 2021. First of all, let me thank Huawei for its long-term partnership with UNESCO, especially in the field of education. The UNESCO and Huawei project on technology-enabled open schools, launched jointly in July 2020 last year, is a key illustration of this kind of cooperation. The project explores future schooling models, thereby contributing to UNESCO's global initiative on the futures of education, that it's about rethinking, reshaping, reimagining teaching and learning at this time of profound transitions, whether we are speaking about our relationship with the planet, with technology, or with each other. The core value of every technological revolution in history is to help humans overcome global challenges and improve human well-being. And the success of the technological innovation can't be validated until it's adopted by the entire society as a public and common good. Well, from climate change to the COVID-19 pandemic, the challenges we face today are actually global, mirroring our interdependence, interconnectivity. We urgently need then technological innovation to address them and mitigate their effects. And the humanistic approach promoted by UNESCO must be the fundamental lens to trigger technological innovation, one that is grounded in fundamental shared values. Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has revealed starting digital divides, for sure, within and between countries. About 1/3 of the world's learners couldn't access remote learning alternatives, as we know. 40% of poorer countries didn't provide any specific support to disadvantaged learners during the crisis. What we have looming before us are setbacks in learning, in earnings, in growth, in development. And the right to education has actually become dependent on connectivity. It makes digital inclusion more than ever a societal and moral imperative. Through the Global Education Coalition, counting today more than 170 partners, UNESCO is forging cooperation around digital learning and skills, connectivity, teachers and gender to create more resilient and equitable education systems. This is the good premise and precondition for a real recovery and building back better. Our organization is also developing normative instruments to promote open science, to promote open educational resources and open access to software because we need to share knowledge widely to respond to global challenges effectively. We call on high-tech companies to increase investment in research and development on affordable digital devices and connectivity. More free and low-cost digital solutions should be made available for digitally marginalized groups, while creating applications to address various forms of disabilities and making them freely accessible should be the social responsibility of the IT industry. We appreciate Huawei's investment in developing and supporting free access to StorySign and high-power mobile application to translate storybooks into sign language for deaf children. Digital inclusion cannot happen with addressing gender discrimination in access to technology itself. In the least developed countries, only 15% of women use the internet compared to almost 30% of men. Girls are significantly less likely to pursue technology-related studies than boys, and women are much less represented in the IT industry or AI. UNESCO's new strategy on technological innovation in education calls actually for gender transformative intervention that can empower girls and women with digital skills and competencies. It's about empowerment, it's about the freedom of choice. I take then the opportunity to thank Madam Catherine Chen, the director of Huawei's board, for addressing our conference on girls' digital skills and digital learning last July. Women's success in the IT industry serves as an inspiration to girls, as a role model which very much needed today. In the presence of the International Union for Conservation of Nature today, let me also draw attention to another topic, to the digital carbon footprint. The carbon emission produced by the use of digital technology count for around 3.7% of global emissions, larger than the share of the entire aviation industry. It's imperative then for all actors to explore more energy-efficient technologies and to deploy solutions that target carbon neutralization. It's a collective and shared responsibility, we know. This brings me back to UNESCO's humanistic approach to ensure that technology is used to enhance human competencies and to put at the service of our shared futures. I look forward, really, to continue cooperation with Huawei and other partners on these topics, and I wish you a successful summit.
Thank you, Ms. Giannini. Our next speaker today is Dr. Gretel Aguilar, Deputy Director General of IUCN. She brings with her more than 25 years of experience in conservation and sustainable development, having worked extensively on developing and applying environmental law and policy in collaboration with governments and civil society. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Aguilar.
And welcome, and thank you for your interest in the TECH4ALL, Advancing Digital Inclusion with Technology. We are grateful to Huawei for bringing us here together to discuss how technology can help nature and people thrive. I am glad to see so many leaders and partners here today from all over the world that will share with us their views and stories. Before I begin, I wish everyone safety and health in these challenging times. The global COVID-19 pandemic is a health crisis, but it's also social, and economical challenge to the sustainable development of the world. This pandemic reminds us of many fundamental things biodiversity provides for us. For example, the food we eat, the water we drink, we breathe, and the beautiful sceneries we enjoy. If nature is used sustainably, we can keep enjoying these wonderful things that Earth is giving us. We can say that the COVID pandemic made it even clearer on how much human well-being depends on a healthy relationship with nature. But we continue to see floods and natural disasters affecting many countries. We see uncontrolled waste and consumption, rapid industrial development and urbanization. Our thirst for natural resources and infrastructure has depleted our lands and waters, accelerating biodiversity loss and climate crisis. We know our Earth, Mother Nature, is under pressure. The good news is that resilience is in our nature. With nature, we can ensure a more prosperous and healthy world. So the question is, what do we need for a successful action to address these challenges? What is it that we need to be successful? IUCN knows well, taking advantage of our global network of over 1,400 member organizations and over 18,000 experts worldwide. In the last more than 70 years, we have been working hard in trying to achieve our vision, a just world that values and conserves nature. Can we find balance and harmony between humans and nature? Yes, we can. Since its establishment in 1948, IUCN has become the global authority on the status of the natural world. The knowledge and tools IUCN provides are critical for ensuring sustainable development. Let me just give you some examples. In 1960, IUCN established the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species. In the 1970s, we developed the standard for protected areas. In the 1980s, IUCN was among the first that brought the term sustainable development to the world. In the 1990s, we recognized the importance of the private sector in conservation. And in 2012, we launched the idea of nature-based solutions across the world. And let me just share with you also that just last week, we had the IUCN World Conservation Congress, where we launched our new program and powerful message to the world, including the potential of new and innovative technologies in support of better conservation outcomes. In recent decades, we start to believe that digital technology can be an important part of the solution and can help us to solve challenges if used correctly and smartly. Digital technology might play a positive enabling role in nature conservation, as it will help gather and consolidate data on nature and on people, make it easier data integration and analysis, help us with communications, dissemination, and enhance users' experience, support informed decision-making and participatory governance. However, to IUCN, technology should always adhere to three main principles. First, accessibility. We need to ensure that people have the tools and infrastructure to access the technology solutions they need. The second principle is efficiency. Focus on improving the efficiency of resource use of human activities while enhancing the efficiency of conservation actions. And the third principle is accountability. We rely on leaders at all levels and in all sectors to make responsible decisions, and technology allows us to ensure leaders make informed decisions with the right information, keep the promises, and deliver the best outcomes. I am therefore very looking forward to the results and experience from the Technology for Nature partnership between IUCN and Huawei, to demonstrate that to the world how technologies can support nature conservation in terms of supporting data analysis, monitoring in national parks, helping conserve areas by collecting and analyzing acoustic data, supporting coral restoration and marine protection, and conserving the rainforest habitats. In IUCN, we believe that by working together with different sectors, we can get humanity's relationship with nature back on the right path. In IUCN, we know that we need urgently to address the interlinked climate and biodiversity crisis, having science, data technology, and technology as our allies. Our speakers from around the world today will provide detailed and exciting examples on how technology can, in action, support nature conservation. I am looking forward to listen to this excellent sharing. And let me finish by saying thank you. Thank you to all of you, wherever you are. Thank you for being together with us via networks that are supported by technology. Let's have technology in our side so we can deepen our impact and speed up our response to the world's environment crisis. Thank you very much and have a very successful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aguilar. Yes, innovative use of technology is part of the solution to responding to the environmental crisis that we are now facing. Now, let's move on to our first panel, Driving Equity and Quality in Education. This session will be moderated by Dr. Fengchun Miao, Chief of the Unit for Technology and Artificial Intelligence in Education, UNESCO Education Sector. I would now like to hand over to Dr. Miao.
Welcome to the panel on education of the TECH4ALL Summit of the edition of 2021. The theme of this panel on education is about driving equity and quality in education through technology. This panel on education is organized under the backdrop of the COVID-19. We all know that since the outbreak of the COVID-19, we have been experiencing the largest education disruption in human history. As we know, this is more serious for these people who are under the marginalized groups, and especially in the unreached regions by the internet. To our statistic, from a half to a third of students didn't have any access to learning opportunity through any kind of distance learning format. This is very serious to the world and to the education system. But at the same time, we also witness that technology came to the center stage in ensuring the continuity and the quality of learning during the crisis. So with this panel will try to draw lessons from the COVID-19 crisis, but also to provide guidance when we move forward from the pandemic. So we try to respond to three questions. How can we ensure that people who need technology the most will have the access to technology? This is a very fundamental question. The second one is that how the potential of technology can be leveraged to ensure the continuity and the quality of learning, both under normal situation, but also under the crisis situation, when we are facing more frequent crisis and the pandemic. The third question is that how can more technological innovation be created to trigger to used to advance the digital inclusion, especially in the education sector. And I have the honor to introduce the other three panels of this panel discussion. The first one is Mr. Oisin Wharton, Instant Network School Program Manager from Vodafone Foundation. You may want to wave your hands. The second one is Mr. Bram Over. He is the Digitrack Program Leader under the Close Gap. Please wave your hands. The third one, we have the honor to have a female to keep the gender balance. It's Ms. Lin Hui. She is the Secretary General, You Change China Social Entrepreneur Foundation. Welcome. Before I give floor to the other panelists to share their view, I would like to share opening presentation from UNESCO's perspective. I want to share a few points. First of all, when we look at the equity, equality and inclusion in education, especially through the use of technology. We should put the use of technology and the inclusion and equity in education under overall education system. I think most of the country now are planning the post-pandemic futures of education. And we have seen kind of trends that, countries started to talk about the planning and the building of a neural infrastructure of the learning system, especially towards a post-pandemic, more inclusive, more crisis resilient learning system. Especially, we the countries are considering the future of schooling system, which means in the history, we build a physical school campus, we hire teachers, and we teach students in classroom. We already learned that it doesn't work if the crisis come again, if the schools are forced to close. So with this, the country are thinking of a more crisis resilient school system, meaning that they want to make the school more open and more successful, both from the school base, but also from the home. And even sometimes from the third safe place, if both schools and home are burned down when the wildfire happen. So we need to think of the third place for accessing learning opportunities. And with this, all the countries are considering or have to consider three pillars of new infrastructure for learning system, including technology, teacher and human facilitator, and the third one is the content. And with this, when we talk about the equity for technology, actually there's two layers of equity. The first one is equitable access to technology. This is the precondition before we talk about the equity in terms of using technology in education. And then the education system and IT industry need to think how we can leverage the potential of technology to advance equity, inclusion, gender equality in education through the innovative use of technology, of course, including the use of innovative technology solution. And for the human perspective, we need to consider the equity in terms of the digital skills among different populations. And at the same time, we have observed that there's a gender discrimination that has prevent girls from learning and from accessing technology, and more importantly, much less the females are taking the study in the IT and engineering area, as pointed by the ADG education of UNESCO in the opening remarks. And at the same time, in terms of the equity in the content, we need to think of the accessibility of the content. For example, are we making the content accessible for people with a disability, with the blind children and the people with hearing with disability? At the same time, we also need to think of the equity in terms of the cultural and the language minority, and this kind of cultural and language minor groups, to make the content more cultural and gender sensitive. The second perspective I want to share is that we need to look at the global governance for digital learning, not only for digital learning, but also for the whole digitalization sector. So there's four key players in this architecture of the global governance. The first one, of course, there's a sharp rise up of the digital private governance represented by the major digital platforms. We would like them to pursue the digital public good, but they would like to pursue their commercial interest. There's a conflict over there. We need to think of for example, there's a lot of dispute about the data ownership and even how we should price the data we are providing to the database industry. And also there's data security if we are using more and more cloud solution. And from the intergovernmental perspective, UNESCO is one of the intergovernmental agency, like the other UN agencies. We are pursuing the common good, to use the public, to negotiate based the public good to reach a common good in terms of using the digital solutions. And this common good will cross border and also across different groups. We are producing and releasing we call it international standard setting instruments, including the recommendation on ethics for AI that will be adopted in November this year by UNESCO. At the same time, of course, we have the governance. The traditional force of governance is the state government, and they are putting national regulation. But we need to pay attention that the state public governance is much left behind the development, the rapid growth of the private governance. And at the same time, the government usually don't have the knowledge to counterbalance the rise up of the private governance. As the force power or effects of this governance is the individual users as a civil society, and how we should consider their data privacy and their awareness about their digital well-being is another issue within the global governance for the digital learning. And recently we launched a survey on the use of artificial intelligence in COVID-19 education response globally, both from the non-governmental sector, but also the government sector. We learned some lessons based on the survey. We found that during the COVID-19, the high technology is not used to support the high touch of the human society, meaning that during the COVID-19 crisis, almost all the IT company took this one as a commercial opportunity, not an opportunity to drive the technological innovation for public good. This is really unfortunate. The second one is that this inclusion game, when we talk about the digital inclusion, is very much a game in an exclusive technology club, meaning that this game is only played and talked within the exclusive technology club that already have access to technology. Not so many players, not so many technology companies, they pay attention to the unreached group, which means they don't have technology. And we often are not talk about the support for them to access technology. I hope the panel of this discussion will share your view and experience. The third one from this survey is that very often the evidence of using technology to ensure the continuity and the quality of learning is really scarce. We don't find so many evidence that can really show that because of the use of technology, we increase the continuity to this extent, or we ensure the quality and we mitigate the learning loss. This evidence remain very scarce. And by the end, I want to reiterate the humanistic principle that was introduced by ADG Education of UNESCO in the opening remarks. In UNESCO, we are promoting the humanistic principle on the use of technology across different sectors. First of all, we would like to highlight that technology should be in the service of people as a digital public good, not as a private good, only for the rich group, as we are seeing now and happen every day. The second point is that technology should be used to enhance human competency, especially the artificial intelligence should be used to enhance humans' intelligence, not to enfeeble or weaken humans' intelligence. The third one is that the high technology should be used to protect the human touch and to enable the new forms of human interaction, not to replace human, not to replace humans' interaction. And the technological innovation should be urgently created to neutralize the harmful impact of digital technology on environment. We all know that the carbon emission due to the use of technology now account for 3.7% of the whole emission. It's larger than the entire aviation industry. And we should find out a solution to neutralize this negative environment. Otherwise, the use of technology will further do harm to the climate change. And by the end, I want to introduce to you three most important publications and reports from UNESCO, among others. The first one is Beijing Consensus on AI and Education. The second one is a report on AI and education, a guidance for policymakers. And the third one is a guidance on the development of open educational resources policy. You can download them. They are available in multiple languages. With this, I would like to ask our panel some questions. First of all, I would like to address one question to Oysen from the Vodafone Foundation. And we know that in most of the case, the refugee camp are not well equipped to support education. How was the Vodafone Foundation provided the young refugees their host communities, especially we sometimes call them facilitators, sometimes we call them teachers for refugee learners. You know, how you provide with the different group of people with access to digital learning content and even the internet connectivity, and how do you make it work? Just before I give the floor to you, 3 years ago, we published a report, actually I'm the co-author, on the use of mobile technology for the learning of refugees. We found that, you know, when a refugee need to travel from the conflict country, from Syria to Europe, the first thing they need to do is to switch on their mobile phone or to buy a SIM card in the local market to you know, insert into their mobile phone and call their friends. So I think you know, I know that Vodafone is doing a good job. I want to give the floor to you to listen to you from your experience. The floor is with yours, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Picking up on your point before I come into education and what we're doing, picking up on your point about refugees on the move needing connectivity, what we've been doing on the shores of Greece and Spain is providing free Wi-Fi for people who arrive in Europe so that they can stay in touch with their loved ones. Those who cannot afford, for example, to buy a SIM card, if you provide Wi-Fi and charging, that can help. But just on your question around what we're doing in refugee camps and around education in particular, first I'd like to start by giving some context on refugees and education. Today, there are more than 18 million refugees or displaced people worldwide, and 40% of these people are children. With an average stay in camps of 20 years, this means that children can be born and do their entire schooling in a camp, often located in remote and isolated areas, with limited access to the outside world. And then schools and camps, despite the amazing job that UNHCR, UNESCO, WFP, UNICEF, many NGOs are doing on the ground, schools and camps are often overcrowded, lack basic infrastructure, trained teachers, educational material such as simply books. And when I mean overcrowded classrooms, I don't mean 40 students, for example, I mean 100, 120. And lack of books, I don't mean a book per student, I mean sometimes only 2 books for 100 students in the class. And for almost half of child refugees, education remains out of reach. And access decreases as children go up the education ladder, with only 31% of refugees accessing secondary school against a global average of 60%. At Vodafone Foundation, we believe that every boy and girl should have access to quality education, and that's in line with SDG 4, and regardless of where they are and their nationality. So 7 years ago, we set up the Instant Network Schools program with the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, to help reach this goal. INS is a pioneering, holistic, and human-centered model of effective use of technology to support quality education for refugees and host communities. And we provide an end-to-end connected education solution, including power, connectivity, a classroom in a box or instant classroom, which includes tablets donated by Huawei, which I would like to take this opportunity to thank for their support over the years. We provide digital educational content, teacher training, and a coach to support the teachers in delivering interactive lessons and technical support from a dedicated team at Vodafone Foundation, which I lead. And then we have Vodafone employee volunteers who support on the ground. INS has become the flagship program of UNHCR's Connected Education, being holistic and human-centered design. The program focuses not just on increasing access to technology, but on empowering teachers and maximizing the impact of technology in the classroom to ultimately improve learning outcomes for students. And we deliver training on classroom management, child-centered pedagogies, exploratory learning methods to help support gradual lasting transition in teaching methods. So where we are today, we've supporting 56 schools today in 6 African countries, and have supported over 126,000 students and 1,200 teachers so far. And our ambition is that by the end of 2025, we want to deploy up to 300 schools and reach 500,000 students from refugee camps and host community students, and empower over 10,000 teachers to deliver 21st century education. And of course, COVID has highlighted the need to increase investments in connected education and technology in the classroom and outside of the classroom to allow students to stay, to keep learning even if they're from home or from other places. And we're adapting the program along the way. But thank you for the opportunity to talk about our program, and look forward to hearing the other panelists and to answering any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Oysin, for the very clear and comprehensive presentation of the project. I take note of 2H. You try to feature, human-centered and holistic approach, and human-centered, and also you highlight the urgency and the context of the refugee camps, especially within the camps. We are talking about the camps that is not mainstreamed by the local community. They are very much excluded from the local society. And I think the holistic approach is try to address all the barriers they are facing to the access to learning. And I think you packaged all the possibility, connectivity, devices, content, pedagogy, especially the importance of the training of teachers. I think it's an excellent model. I would like to see one of the best model in terms of supporting refugee camps. And I also appreciate the vision of Vodafone Foundation in terms of targeting 500,000 of the population. Is a significant contribution to the support the international community are providing to the refugee populations. I really appreciate it, and it's really impressive. Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Brian Over. So we know that the access to technology and teaching digital skills more or less is like the relationship between chicken and eggs, because if we want to teach the digital skill, the population should have the access to technology. So that's very often what we are facing. So meaning that the access to technology and even the we call it conventional infrastructure in terms of electricity supply and the very conventional connectivity remain barriers to the teaching of digital skills, and they are very fundamental barriers to the equitable digital skills. We very much want to know how does close the gap, make sure that it can reach the most isolated community. We need that this population who don't have access to technology and the connectivity, and then provide digital skill training to them. So the floor is with you, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Feng Shun. Before I go into your question, which is very relevant, I would maybe come back to the thematic of the panel and the question of how you can achieve equality and quality within education. So to support that, please allow me to start a short PowerPoint presentation. So I'm Bram Over, a digital program lead, on which I will speak a little bit more later. But first, I would like to highlight our mission and vision of how to achieve equality in education, because we believe that it's a basic human right to have access to ICT, but also to have access to the digital world in an affordable and in a qualitative way. So we do that by collecting used ICT devices and refurbishing them to supply a high quality ICT device to social and medical and educational projects in developing countries, so that everybody has the same chances in life. And we believe that ICT can be a very important instrument in that, in education, but also in entrepreneurship, in the development of somebody's personal life. So what have we done so far? We've collected more than 1 million assets, and we've supported 7,600 projects with that, reaching 3.5 million IT users weekly. So you can see that most of our projects are in Sub-Saharan Africa, and that's because the digital divide is still the biggest in Sub-Saharan Africa compared to the rest of the world. We also value, and I appreciate that you mentioned that, Mr. Feng Shung, in your presentation, that ICT can be an enabler for vulnerable groups in society, but it can also be harmful when it ends up in waste piles. So we also are very focused on recycling the devices when they become end of life. This is all made possible by more than 500 donors and partners that we have that donate their ICT material to close the gap, so that it can be redeployed for a social prize. And to give you a short overview of our model, we collect the ICT devices and we refurbish it with special attention to data security, because of course the devices we get donated, we want to reintroduce them safely. They get shipped to one of the destination countries, and they get deployed by one of our service partners. And they are very important partners on the ground that implement the ICT in schools, in hospitals, for example, and can give the training and the aftercare support that is needed. Then when the ICT device has had their life and becomes end of life, then we collect it, do local dismantling, and ship the most dangerous components off to Europe, where we bring it back into the value chain. So we really focus on having, next to our social impact, also a circular model. And now maybe to go deeper into your question is how do we reach isolated communities? Because you're right, it's difficult to reach locations that are especially not connected to the electricity and to the internet, because you can bring an ICT device to a very isolated community in Sub-Saharan Africa, but they won't have any means to charge it, to access it, and also won't have the training to know how to work with it. So what we developed in 2014 is the Digital program, and this is for us a way to also reach that target communities that don't have access to electricity and connectivity. So what is the DigiTruck? The DigiTruck is a mobile ICT classroom. It consists of a refurbished shipping container that we fully refurbish into a ICT classroom with windows, a door, a storage room, and it's put on a trailer, as you can see on the last image, for mobility, so it can be driven to areas where there's no access to electricity and internet. Of course, there's the disclaimer that with this kind of truck model, you can only drive on paved roads, but nonetheless, you can still go to an area that is remote and park it in a central location. And sometimes people from the surrounding communities will come to the DigiTruck to follow different kinds of programs. So the DigiTruck is a model that works with 3 parties. Close the Gap as coordinator. We have a sponsor, and I'm happy to say that Huawei is one of those sponsors that supports the DigiTruck program in 3 countries now. And then we work with the local educational partner that is accustomed to the ways of the local communities and knows how to implement a digital skills program. And the digital skills program really vary from region to region. We have very basic digital skills programs. For example, in Kenya, where all age groups can come and learn how to work with a computer, basic surfing, managing a drive online, Excel, Word, but we also have very advanced programs for coding. For example, in France, together with Huawei, we're running a program for young adults that don't have access to the labor market to skill themselves as a coder and have more and better chances to get a job. So the DigiTruck, just as the ICT devices, I think are a means to achieve that more people in the world have access to quality education. And for us, that's really the aim that we have to support that. So thank you very much, and looking forward to hearing also the other panelists' views.
Thank you for the presentation. I want to highlight 3 takeaway points. The first one is that the formulation of the DigiTruck program, first of all, is very well designed. It's similar to the first program of Vodafone Foundation. Is also taking a holistic approach to pack the devices, connectivity, and the electricity supply together. More importantly, is providing the training of digital skills, especially the skills for job. I think it's very important. It's not only to get the education closer to the isolated community, but to bring the job and the skills to the community. The second one is the approach of refurbish the e-waste, which means recycle the waste, give the the second life to the waste. I think it should be one of the trends in terms of using technology in education. UNESCO is organizing a training workshop for policymakers. Probably we could invite you to share your experience with the policymaker for them to integrate the recycling of e-waste in their national policy. The third one, drawing on the lessons, we need to pay attention to the supply chain, the whole supply chain, and the life cycle of the technology, including for education, meaning that maybe we also think of the sustainable life cycle of the technology, not only think that it's once and over and once it's used, it's threw away. We need to think how we can reuse them. I think Huawei also have a program of recycling a mobile phone. I think this kind of program need more attention, and I think more people need to implement this kind of a program. Thank you again for your presentation. Now I would like to turn the attention to our only one female panel member, Mr. Lin Hui. And because I'm from China, China has been undergoing continuous reform in the education system. Over recent years, increasing emphasis has been placed at the scientific literacy, information literacy. Actually, there's another literacy called humanity literacy. There's 3 literacies in China's education system. So as a representative of a youth and also female entrepreneur, I would like to listen to your view on these trends in the education system, and how is your organization responding to these developments and this direction? The floor is with yours, Lin Hui.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank Huawei to give me this fantastic opportunity to learn from my panel, fellow panelists. And yeah, as you have known that China has a lot reform and advancement in educational system. And for our primary pursuit, rural revitalization is one of the most discussed topics. So our work will focus on rural education. And I think the China's countryside cannot thrive without a new generation of accomplished young people. So that is why we launched the Rural Young Teachers Social Support and Public Affairs Program, which is green pepper in short. It's easier to understand and remember, because in Chinese, the pronunciation of young teachers is called 青年教师, is 青椒, so it's green pepper. A little complicated to explain though. And the program aims to promote rural education by empowering young teachers from professional, perceptional, and also personal aspects, so that they can deliver high quality and inquiry-based interactive learning experience to their students. Because of the use of ICT, we can reach teachers and students in remote rural areas, and the participants will receive a year-long, not just days, it's a year-long training consisting of professional and ethics courses, as well as one-on-one supervision and companionship. And we collaborate with our partners from universities, social organizations, and corporations to create unique training contents and deliver them over, I think that's 20,000 teachers a year. Through Huawei's WeLink platform, we give a big thank for Huawei for that. And so that the program has benefited more than 79,000 rural young teachers and even vast number of rural students. And that's how we can reach such a large scale of training. And additionally, the teacher who received this kind of training played a very proactive role during the COVID pandemic, because they are familiar and confident in teaching online, and which help a lot to rebuilding the resilient schooling system in the time of emergency. So that's why we focus on this online training for rural teachers. And for the factors that you mentioned, that technology advancement in China almost are envied with all developing countries. And we have such technology advancement, and we want them to be used in rural development. And this represents both challenges and opportunities in educational practice. On the one hand, the information age requires different skill sets and mindset from our new generation. And scientific information literacy is becoming essential qualities in the future. On the other hand, ICT development has made it possible to deliver cutting-edge knowledge and ideas to the most remote area and people most in need. So I want to learn more about the work that Austin has done in the camp. So maybe we can set up another meeting to talk about that in the future. And for today, I think that education must equip students with scientific and information literacy to tackle the future issues. And apart from the primary subjects, such as Chinese, English, and math, and the trainings focus on minor subjects, such as aviation, graphic programming, arts, and sports, are also given to rural young teachers, and various sub-projects to promote students' scientific information and also humanities literacy in our program, and to encourage their curiosity and creativity. So that's pretty much our work in the past years. And later, we will introduce scientific, like data scientist, AI, and other kind of new technology in our system. And we are trying to build up the AI system for our teaching platform to give marks to the teachers' homework, because we have 20,000 teachers a year. So it's a great homework for our program to give marks to their homework. So I think AI will play a very positive role in our program as well. And we also want to build up a one fit for all solution for the different discipline teachers to grow. So that we need a lot of support and help from all over the society. So thank you.
Thank you very much. This video, I think there's no word to be more to state the more importance about the teacher's role in education system. Teacher should be the most important player in education system, and I think the teachers in the rural region, in the isolated community, need the most help. I think this project target teachers to use teacher as the agent in the remote region, in the rural region, to help the students. I think you are choosing the right entry point for the program. At the same time, you have planned again holistic and sustainable modality in terms of the teacher training. You planning a 1 year long training program. It's really in line with the science of education, meaning that teacher training is not an event, it's a long-term process. We need to train teachers and support teachers and coach them through a long process. I think this is also a key features of the project. I think we need more efforts from the company like Huawei, because to my knowledge, Huawei is one of the very few company provide funding support to UNESCO during the COVID-19. Through the funds, we are helping countries to plan and build technology-enabled open school and the crisis-resilient learning system. So we call on more companies, more partners to make this kind of donation and partnership with a pure charity and pure purpose in advancing equity. The second point I want to share is that from these three projects, we can summarize that, the equity and the inclusion, if we want to advance them, we cannot sacrifice one generation. If we want to advance equity and inclusion, we need to start immediately, and we need vision. So that's the two points I want to summarize from all three presentations. And thank you again for your intervention. I would like to draw a conclusion to this panel on education of the 2021 edition of the TECH4ALL Summit. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for your contribution.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions, and to Dr. Miao for moderating this panel. I hope you found this as insightful as I did. A number of lessons have been learned during the past year. This crisis has changed the face and future of education. Together, we can achieve more and make education more inclusive and accessible for everyone. Next up is our second panel, entitled Conserving Nature with Technology. James Hardcastle, Assistant Director, IUCN Protected Areas Programme, is our moderator for this session. Over to you, James.
In today's panel, we're going to really explore some of these examples and projects that are implementing technology. And in each case, these projects are using technology in an appropriate way that can really demonstrate impacts. So can really see the results of how technology is making attributable, beneficial gains in terms of nature protection and nature conservation from the use of digital connectivity, digital technology, hardware, software. So I'd like to move now to introduce our panelists. We have 5 exciting presentations to receive. The first would be from Tang Yanfei from the Hainan Institute and National Parks. The second will be from Professor Nadim Nazruli from the University of Mauritius and representing EcoMode. The third will be from Chrissy Durkin, who's with the Rainforest Connection. And the fourth from Stephanie Ray of the Mammal Society. And then finally, wrapping up the presentations will be Bernardo Reyes from the organization Ética en los Bosques. What the presenters are going to introduce are examples of how nature conservation action and technology can be a fair and effective solution to nature conservation challenges and achieve positive impacts. So I'd like to hand over directly to our colleagues in China and to go to Hainan and ask Tang Yanfei to give us our presentation on the primate conservation that's underway in Hainan National Park. Please, Mr. Yanfei.
Thank you, James. Hello, everyone here. Thanks for inviting. This is Tang Yanfei, the Executive Director and the legal representative of Hainan Institute of National Park. As a high-end think tank, an open scientific research platform, and a bridge for international communication and cooperation concerning national parks, HIMP have continuously taken Hainan gibbon conservation and scientific research as primary task. Besides, first-ranked experts from leading institutions around the world have been brought together to carry out joint research on the conservation of Hainan gibbon and the tropical rainforest. Currently, the data storage cards that contain Hainan gibbon sound need to be taken by works. While there are some problems, the data connection process may be disturbed by changeable weather. It is a tough job. It causes more disturbance to the gibbon. And also, the huge amount of data cannot be stored for a long time and analyzed in time. So through the cooperation with IUCN this time, HIMP hopes to make breakthrough in the following areas. Firstly, to further improve the acoustic data collection. Secondly, try to solve the problem of wireless transmission and network storage of acoustic data. Thirdly, to establish an acoustic database which covers characteristics of vertebrate species, including Hainan gibbon. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Professor Yanfei. That's really, really interesting. And we're delighted that IUCN can collaborate with Hainan National Park, and in particular, bring our standards and our conservation best practice to work with you to work together to find solutions to protect the Hainan gibbon. So from the forests of Hainan, we'd like to move now a little bit further west and south to the beautiful island of Mauritius, and specifically to the coasts and the waters of Mauritius. And I'd like to now ask another professor, Professor Nadim Nazruli, to give us a quick overview of the project collaboration on TECH4ALL in Mauritius. Please, Professor Nadim.
Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity. And greetings from Mauritius. And well, we are from the South and Western Indian Ocean region. And Mauritius being a small tropical island developing state, original comprising numerous islands located around the Southwest Indian Ocean. Yet we are just 60 kilometers from east to west, and from south to the north, 60 to 30 kilometers. But basically, I would say more than 80% of Mauritians don't really know swimming, and less than 5% would dive. So there's a need for this bridging the gap using technology. This is where technology stands, where we bridge this gap and bring more people toward the sea. And this is in line with conservation and active restoration of reef. Normally, the use of this project comprised of use of camera system for live viewing and monitoring that would be projected not just to Mauritius, but worldwide. And this we will be able to understand the changes happening underwater, given that it has been really dynamic underwater to survey and continuously monitor. So basically, we have been doing coral farming active restoration around Mauritius, several sites, and this using technologies that have been proven worldwide and published elsewhere, and even here in Mauritius tested since the past 10 years. But now the use of technology and AI is fundamental to safeguard the remaining reef. And we have, like some sites, 80% of corals degraded, and some sites we would say we need basically an ecologically engineered to be performed underwater. But through this, basically, first of all, we need this kind of technology to support and understand what is happening down there on a timely basis. And then, of course, this is in line with Green List standard of the IUCN, which we would like to have one of the site protected, and also in the long line to make it as a marine protected site. Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Nadim. So really interesting. We're going to be able to go underwater using technology to open up the underwater world to thousands of Mauritians who otherwise can't necessarily to get there. And we're going to use the technology as well to establish an effective nature conservation area involving local fishers, local people, aligned to IUCN standards. So it's a really exciting project, and we're looking forward to work with you more on the results. I'd like to now go to our next speaker, and we're going to go global, but we're going to go from the sea into the forest, primarily into the forest. And I'd like to ask Chrissy Durkin from Rainforest Connection to give us an overview of the Rainforest Connection, your activities, your programs, and how you're really harnessing technology in so many ways to help advance nature conservation. So please, Chrissy, over to you.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Rainforest Connection is a nonprofit tech startup focused on using acoustic monitoring for conservation. Acoustic data is pretty unique. Almost all species are making noise: insects, mammals, amphibians, birds, and reptiles, but threats like illegal logging, artificial intelligence models that make it possible to break down the makeup of ecosystems and understand how they're being affected by things like climate change and encroachment. We then create actionable recommendations for how we can improve conservation. Rainforest Connection has been working with Huawei TECH4ALL for 3 years now, utilizing the Huawei Cloud and Model Arts, in addition to Huawei directly supporting 8 projects around the world, and the creation of several CNNs for biodiversity monitoring. The end goal is really to create a planetary map of biodiversity using acoustics so that everyone anywhere can connect with and protect the natural world.
Thanks so much, Chrissy. Really interesting introduction and very quick overview. There's so much more depth to what you're doing. And I think what I really like about the Rainforest Connection work is the ability to connect, you know, the defenders, the protectors of nature, be them indigenous peoples, local communities, park rangers, government, and give them, empower them with tools and with technology to be able to react fast, to make decisions, and to, you know, to enhance their nature conservation work. So thanks so much for your quick introduction to Rainforest Connection. I'd like to jump now to our next speaker, and we're going to go a little bit maybe back into the water. I'd like to ask Stephanie Ray from the Mammal Society to give us a quick overview of your work on technology, inclusive technology, and technology for nature. So please, Stephanie, over to you.
Thanks very much. Well, we're not going quite back into the water. We're staying in the forests. So I'm with the Mammal Society. I chair that organization. The Mammal Society is a charity. We've been in existence for nearly 70 years now. And really what we're about is the science of conservation. So we're there to actually pull together the evidence that drives effective conservation action. So we study mammals. We think that mammals are a good indicator of ecosystem health. When you start to see impacts on mammal populations, we know that ecosystem processes are being disrupted and that significant interventions might be needed. And on the slide there, you can see that, you know, we've developed recently the red list for British mammals in accord with the IUCN. So we've identified that 1 in 4 species of British mammal is actually threatened with extinction, and that includes rodents, which are normally very prolific breeders and very successful species. We've managed to reduce some rodents in the UK to the brink of extinction. And one of those species that we're really interested in is the red squirrel. The red squirrel is endangered across the UK, but particularly in England, it's lost 60% of its range in the last 10 to 15 years. It's mainly through competition with the grey squirrel, which is an introduced species that lives in the same habitats, and they can't seem to coexist very well together. And there's evidence of disease transmission from one to the other. So the project that we're just beginning in partnership with Rainforest Connection, Huawei, and the University of Bristol is actually using acoustic monitoring to monitor squirrel populations. We're looking in areas where red squirrels exist on their own, greys exist on their own, and where they exist side by side. Now, we're hoping to be able to, we know that red squirrels have a distinctive and identifiable vocalization, but what we're hoping to do is, can we dig into that a little bit more? Can we see how their behavior changes and their vocalizations change when they are or aren't close to grey squirrels? Are there any other indications that we can see as to what are the factors that lead to red squirrels losing the battle against greys in a particular area? So we're looking at, are there any other indications such as human disturbance in that area? Are there any other ecological parameters, any other features about the biodiversity in that area? And that's why these techniques that we're using with Rainforest Connections, the acoustic monitoring and the AI analysis, really helps us, because we can use so much data, more than we'd ever be able to do if we were doing some of this manually, to really get a picture of what's going on, so that we can start to make predictive models and start to put more really targeted conservation action on the ground. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. And I fully agree. I think that the AI in particular, artificial intelligence, and the digital accumulation of data, it's really going to help us to bring the right information to make these conservation decisions much faster. And so what previously might have taken many months of field work and analysis, can be done almost instantaneously. So you can have same day or next day, feedback on the results to be able to make some conservation decisions. I also think scaling up, you showed so many species there in the United Kingdom. It's not famous for its biodiversity, but you do actually have a lot, and unfortunately too much on that red list.
Absolutely.
So thanks so much for that quick overview. And so now let's go to Bernardo Reyes from Ética de los Bosques, who's going to give us his quick summary of how he and the organization are using digital technology, using technology to advance nature conservation. Please, Bernardo, over to you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we are a small NGO from southern Chile. Our focus is on protecting very endangered forests, the coastal range of Chile, which is over 450 million years old and has a very exclusive ecosystem. And in this area, we're focusing on tracking and using digital technology to track the Darwin fox. An endangered species is one of the most endangered canines in the world. We have less than 70 individuals in the mountain range of Nahuelbuta, and less than 1,000 in Chile. This is an endemic species that needs a lot of attention. And therefore, we have come together with Rainforest Connection to introduce new monitoring systems. And to do so, we are working with the guardians designed by Rainforest Connections, using bioacoustic method to track the calls of these fox and other associated species that might be predators or are the elements that normally are part of the Darwin fox diet. Using monitoring system, bioacoustic monitoring system, allow us also to understand the state of health of the forest, particularly in an area where more than 80% of the native forests have been lost in the past 100 years. And the last few years, we have seen an enormous advance of monocrop plantations. So the Darwin fox is in a critical situation, and for us is the umbrella species of the Nahuelbuta Mountains, and therefore we manage to use monitoring tools, bioacoustic monitoring tools, to give us information for rapid action and understand where there is illegal logging, or to understand when hunters might be in the area. This also entices a lot of local residents and local conservation communities to react on time to the threats that are being put on these forests and the habitat of critical species like Darwin fox.
Thank you so much, Bernardo. That is, yeah, really fascinating. I mean, how vulnerable is that fox species, but also that mountain range? It's such a biodiversity hotspot. Chile is also committed to IUCN's Green List standards, and we're looking forward to working in that region to try and bring those standards and to help connect the technology and the acoustic monitoring that you're doing to help really bring more attention and more political will behind the nature conservation in that region. So I would now like to come back to our panelists with some questions. We've been receiving questions. We have some good feedback and some good, interesting issues to bring to your attention. And so I'd like to start with Hainan and with the gibbons, and to please ask Professor Yan Fei, how what does success look like? The Hainan gibbon, it is so endangered, and we know from the IUCN collaboration that you do have new populations, new babies within this very endangered populations of gibbon in Hainan, which is a result of your long-term conservation. But now you have the technology. Where do you expect to go to? What do you see as kind of the success now for gibbon conservation in Hainan? So please, Professor, give us a response.
Thank you, James. The two newborn baby is really exciting news for us. First of all, it indicates that the family group of Hainan gibbon is expanding and has taken further steps to get rid of extreme danger. Secondly, it shows that their habitat choices have been improved as well. All this improvement give us more confidence in the goal of doubling Hainan gibbons population in about 15 years. However, the conservation of Hainan gibbon still has a long way to go. There are many uncertainties and difficulties. Firstly, the population of Hainan gibbon is too small, only 35, and the reproduction is slow. Secondly, the habitat area needs to be expanded and the quality needs to be improved. It takes a long time. Thirdly, fundamental research on Hainan gibbon is not enough. Many issues, such as reproduction, the disease prevention, need to be studied. So we are really looking forward to joining TECH4ALL project, applying digital technology to better monitoring the population and habitat of Hainan gibbon, reducing human interference, and scientifically analyzing the connected data. Through understanding their population change in time, establishing profile for each individual, carrying out more accurate and detailed research on the conservation of Hainan gibbons, to provide scientific support for their conservation and their reproduction. Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Yanfei. To hear gibbons in the wild, in the forests of East and Southeast Asia is one of the most magical experiences. But your point is so correct, is if we can use acoustics and acoustic monitoring to not disturb, to listen to these gibbons and share that beautiful song with anyone who wants to listen, but also help their conservation, that is really remarkable. So for anybody tuning in, please go on to look up the videos and look up the acoustic and listen to the gibbons of Hainan. It is truly beautiful sounds. So thank you again, Professor Yanfei. And I'd like to shift it now back to Mauritius and to Professor Nadim. And my question is really, why do you believe that real-time underwater monitoring is important for the coral reef conservation and the recovery of this really important? What is the impact do you expect from this innovative underwater monitoring project? Professor Nadim.
Thank you, James. Well, the sea is very dynamic as it is, and life underwater, be it underwater, on land, and between land and the sea are all connected. I would say this as an energy connection, which we link to the food chain, to the food web, and then this kind of connection that we need to understand. So we cannot actually restore one ecosystem or species or a set of species while we don't understand the connection it has over other species and the ecosystem under, I would say, like we're working for underwater. But basically, we human, we cannot be underwater, dive, snorkel all the time during the day and night. So this is where technology bridges this gap and allow us to have the data, the connection when we restore one ecosystem. For example, we are restoring coral reef, to understand what is happening down underwater, what are the implications on other species, because we do place artificial structures, we do place other kind of support, because, well, I would say another thing, destruction has been combined, everyone, but basically now we need to interact what we call as active restoration, so placing some kind of structure. So we need to understand all these interactions. So technologies bridge this gap. And the impacts I would basically expect on this is basically species interaction, behavior, before and after placement, and understand what is happening over time in real-time monitoring, be bleaching with climate change impacts and sea level rise, sea level temperature, and of course recuperation over time. Bleaching, some species will recuperate, and over time we understand what is happening. And when it recuperate, what are other species implications, what are they are interacting with these corals, what we are placing, and of course the species adaptability. We are living in a rapidly changing world, and underwater it is happening. And this is real. We have data. In the past 10 years, we are underwater in some site. We used to have such species of corals, but now we no more found these species of corals. We found another type of species that have taken over. And this is linked to the, of course, other kind of destruction, species adaptability. This species adaptability will eventually help us understand over time and allow more corals and restore ecosystems. Thank you, James. Thank you.
Thanks, Nadine. I'm just going to come back to you very quickly. This is really helping scientific monitoring, but you mentioned before about many Mauritians who cannot swim, and so how do you see the impact on them? How is this project going to help connect to the people living in and around this area?
Yes, it's so unfortunate. A small island, and we are islanders, like, and 1.2 million population, out of which research we have done, 80% don't really know underwater what are real corals, how fish lives and all. And one of our partners, Mauritius Telecom, and of course Huawei together, and TECH4ALL, the project TECH4ALL itself. So one of the aspects is to develop a mobile application and a website dedicated for this project. So the mobile application will help us, will allow people to see what is happening underwater live, and we'll have a news feed. We will continuously feed in information, what is a coral, what are fish, what is this species, and give them example, and the species name, and of course a small brief on the species and general aspect of everything happening underwater, what is eventually underwater. So if we don't understand what is underwater, so it is difficult to conserve and restore, because we have questions, we asked questions earlier, and the response was like, what are corals? But some really don't know. And some says the lagoon should have been just sand, no coral, because it would be easy no, this is really what is happening. But then when you explain how long it takes coral, how long it takes to grow, and if you work on it, it destroys, I would say, decennies of growth of coral. So you destroy all this. So this will help people also understand underwater and help to bridge this gap. So technology here is a must to allow us to make people understand and at a larger scale, and sensitize them at a larger scale. Yeah.
Thanks again, Nadim.
Thanks, James.
So we'll be sure to make sure that all the links to that video feed is available through all the IUCN platforms, that's for sure. I'd like to go now to Rainforest Connection. And really, 7 years sounds like a long time that you've been operating, but it's not. It really is like a snap. And as technology evolves, so the opportunities you have for the application of acoustic monitoring are also evolving. So my question to you is, from starting in kind of just one ecosystem type in rainforest, like how has the expansion to new and different countries, geographies, places, ecosystems, and partners, how has this process been, and what are some of your reflections on the expansion of acoustic monitoring over the last 7 years? Chrissy.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, Rainforest Connection started out purely as a threat detection organization, and our original devices were based on upcycled cell phones, and they were primarily used for illegal logging. But once we sort of discovered all of the incredible uses for acoustics for conservation, we expanded to many more types of applications. Huawei has been a tremendous help in making this happen. We now have projects ranging from stopping poaching of the Balkan chamois in Greece, to monitoring local fauna in Chile with Bernardo and his team, to working with the government of Sarawak, Malaysia to stop legal logging, to now projects just launched last month, like monitoring the red squirrel in the UK with Steph and her team, or holistically monitoring biodiversity in Italy. As a matter of fact, I was just listening to a recording of some bee eaters, these beautiful, vibrantly colored birds migrating in Italy from just a day or two ago, from a recently installed Guardian in Italy, working with Huawei TECH4ALL, Huawei Italy, and the World Wildlife Fund. That data is streamed in real time to the cloud, where researchers have automatic access to it. So Rainforest Connection has expanded our mission to be really a modern, user-friendly interface for exploring, visualizing and monitoring ecoacoustics to extract those insights on species, ecosystems, and interventions. We're building this worldwide platform for ecoacoustics, and we're expanding our reach in order to establish projects around the world in all of these places where local communities' land is severely threatened. And again, that goal is to create is to go kind of beyond that data collection and analysis, beyond the scientific papers, to create real actionable conservation management recommendations through acoustics. So as we're undertaking all of these individual projects with partners, we're building up this global database of the world species calls. And as we're doing that, we're creating these huge labeled data sets for AI models for biodiversity. And the result of that is we're working on developing regional convolutional neural networks in which we can automatically map hundreds of species presence in a region, in regions around the world, which will make it possible to holistically understand how we're impacting the Earth's fauna, and hopefully make it so that we can make really informed conservation decisions on how best to conserve what remains and slow the mass extinction that's currently unfolding. And An example of how to scale this effort up is the Huawei-supported CNN being developed for the Western Amazon. So hundreds of species are being included in this one artificial intelligence model. And as we make it available to more and more partners, they have the ability to automatically understand biodiversity presence in their reserves, including people beyond scientists, like governmental land managers, NGOs, and local communities. So the work being done in one project, the goal is really for it to have a ripple effect to impact all of these conservation efforts around it as well.
Very ambitious. It's great. And based on your trajectory from 7 years, from where you've got to now, I'm sure that will continue. And certainly the collaboration with the Tech4Nature program at IUCN, we're really keen. We've been discussing the last few weeks, including at our World Conservation Congress, how to include the rainforest connection work and vision to align it to our standards, in particular for nature conservation areas, so the Green List standard. To ensure that the technology is really used and we can trace the impact it's having in terms of conservation results. You present something new, it's so exciting. So thanks so much. I'll go now to the next question, which is going back to the United Kingdom and to the Mammal Society. And based on just the initial presentation that you made and just the brief points that you raised, I'd like to play on this idea of education awareness, citizens, the concept of citizen science. And just from your perspective and your experience in the Mammal Society, how do you see the role of digital technology in advancing citizen science, citizen engagement in scientific research? So Stephanie?
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is a really important topic, James, at the moment. We've always wanted to get people involved in the science that we do, and we've got a really long tradition in 70 years of having a membership that's made up not just of professional scientists, but of interested amateurs as well. And we've seen through the COVID pandemic that people not only don't understand scientific method, but in many cases, they really don't trust it. So getting the public involved in science projects, I think, is really valuable in building some of those bridges and building trust in seeing how science and technology actually works. So, we run regular participative survey projects for different mammals. We're kicking off one on harvest mice this autumn. And I'm hoping that in a year or two's time, we'll be able to have the red squirrel project to a stage where we might add a citizen science element of that. There's lots of roles that digital technology can play in that. Traditionally, when we've involved the public in survey projects, we've tried to keep it very simple because we don't want to assume that anybody has technology that might be expensive. Radio tracking equipment, bat detectors, and so on are quite expensive pieces of kit. And so we've tended just to rely on people's eyes and getting them to record visual sightings of mammals and so on. But I guess what we're doing with this sort of acoustic tech that we've been talking about today is, we're adding in another sense that people can use. And people are really constantly carrying enormous computing power around in the palm of their hand these days. So just to be able to record a little segment of noise from a habitat, there are lots of things we can do with that. We can do some pattern matching and try to identify some species that were there without the member of the public who's doing that little mini survey for us even necessarily being able to identify those species themselves. Or we can listen to just how noisy the environment is. So the tech that we're working on with Huawei and Rainforest Connection will allow us to sort of filter out the man-made noise, and then we can use the remaining noise as a kind of measure of biodiversity, if you like. So we can look at how noisy the environment is because how much life there is in it and compare different environments. So, a member of the public recording a little snippet on their mobile phone can get pretty much immediate feedback on how biodiverse or how valuable their local bit of green space is. And that's getting people engaged with the natural environment. And, given the ecological crisis that we're facing, that engagement's hugely important, because if people understand nature and we're engaged with it, then they'll fight to protect it. And we really do need to fight to protect it at the moment.
Thanks so much, Stephanie, and all the best with all the British mammals and their recovery. We do hear interesting news of species coming back to new areas. So let's hope that continues and people can remain engaged.
Thank you.
We'll jump now to a question for Bernardo. So vamos a Chile. Bernardo, we saw camera trap technology, acoustic monitoring for the Darwin fox, for this critically endangered, most valuable species in southern Chile. So I'd like you just to give us some more insights on how the combined technology is really helping protect the fox. And then I have another question, which I'm going to ask now, so you can just roll into that. Your organization is called Ética de los Bosques, no? Which means ethics. And I note it's community-based. It's about involving local people in nature conservation. So I'd like you to also just to reflect on how this monitoring work and this acoustics and all these things are helping engage local people also in nature conservation action. So, por favor, Bernardo.
Technology can effectively enhance monitoring and data gathering efforts. It can help strengthen and amplify the capacities of researchers and also of local communities to engage in conservation efforts. What we're seeing with the Darwin Fox initiative using monitoring is that we needed to combine different monitoring systems because we have a shy species that is very nocturnal with a very reduced habitat. So we needed to find new tools to listen to what's going on in the environment and not just having a picture. We needed to have the film. We need to see what's going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not just a few minutes or seconds that our traditional camera traps are registering. So we have engaged forestry owners, we engage local communities in helping us to report the presence of the Darwin fox that, as I mentioned, is in critical condition in Nahuelbuta mountain range, the only continental area that has a large population, and that's not more than 70 animals. So with the use of bioacoustic, what we are seeing is that we are reducing the transportation cost. The distance cost of moving people back and forth has been reduced because we can, remote sensing and digital technologies can be connected, in this case, to telephone networks to reduce the cost and efficiency in personnel and data gathering through this enhanced autonomous monitoring equipment, and hence provide rapid answers and deployment of personnel when necessary. We are exploring also the use of bioacoustic in monitoring ecosystem health through a pilot monitoring system using this digital technology. What we expect is to analyze a whole gamut of sounds produced by birds, by insects, by amphibians that are members of the network of the Darwin fox. So we can track in a gradient and in different conditions the state of that habitat. So we hope that we might lead towards understanding a larger perspective on the ecosystem health using bioacoustic monitoring. We've seen examples in the Amazon of Peru where local communities are using tablets, for example, to communicate the processes and moments when they can cite illegal logging. And that has been very efficient because communities are locally engaged. Now we are hoping that people will engage with their telephones that just about everyone has because costs have going down on that technology. So the use of telephone and connections, they could, in their own telephones, monitor what's going on with the guardians. We only have at the moment 5 pilot guardians in Nahuelbuta mountain range, but we're hoping that we'll get very clear answer back from that technology, but also the engagement of local people, because for the first time, they are, through environmental education programs, but also visiting the area, they are beginning to open up not just their eyes, they're opening up their ears to the singers and the whole symphony that is taking place on the forest throughout the year, and learning that we cannot miss any of those musicians because that would be really bad news for the health of the ecosystem and for the water they depend on, and for the culture, because many of them are native people. So for them, their language has been learned from the voice of the wind, they tell us. That's what they taught us. They said, we learn our language from the wind, because when you go through certain types of leaves, it makes certain sounds. So they are very, very, very keen on their knowledge of nature, and they are learning with this new method that there are a lot of new singers. They are insects, they are amphibians, they are mammals, they are birds that are making specific calls, and they may even be making alert calls that now they become much more conscious about.
Thank you so much. This has been really interesting. Our time is up. I'd just like to just reflect that, you know, as you said, Bernardo, and as our other presenters have shared, that technology is giving us new ways to engage with people and with our planet. And technology is not out of reach. It's not something inaccessible. It's not too expensive. And with the support of companies like Huawei, it's more and more accessible. Connectivity is increasing. We're all engaged. It really is about finding the right technologies and investing in that technology as a solution. And that investment is not so expensive. It's not so difficult. What is needed is more exchange of ideas, more people who are empowered and able to use that technology. That's where the efficiency can come in. As you mentioned, Bernardo, like having people go in the forest and, you know, every day, you know, that same effort can be reprogrammed into analyzing large sets of data and making better decisions and really targeting that effort to the right places and the right time. So, you know, really what we at IUCN, you know, with the support of Huawei, with support of other partners in our Tech for Nature initiative, is to find as many of these fabulous solutions, these stories, and help scale them up, help share this amongst the community, with the tech community. All of you online listening, you can get involved. Please get involved. Go to the websites, look up Tech for Nature, look up TECH4ALL, look up Mauritius, look up Darwin's Fox, look up Red Squirrels, look up Rainforest Connection. Our mission is that we can promote appropriate use of technologies for fair and effective conservation results. And IUCN is committed to use all our standards, from our red list of threatened species to the green list of successful area-based conservation. We are here and really engaged with our members and with the global network to try and bring technology as a really top, accessible and impactful solution for nature conservation. So on that, I'd like to thank Professor Tang Yang Fei, Professor Nadim Nazruli. I'd like to thank Chrissy Durkin, Stephanie Ray, and Bernardo Reyes, and in particular, our Deputy Director General, Gretel Aguilar, for her opening words. And finally, to thank everyone at the Huawei Tech4ALL initiative for giving us all the opportunity to connect, to engage, and to use technology for nature conservation. So thank you and enjoy the rest of the summit.
I think you will agree that this was a really interesting session, which highlighted just how we can make innovative use of technology to minimize the impact of humanity on the environment. On behalf of Huawei, I would like to thank all of you for tuning in and listening, being part of our Tech4ALL Advancing Digital Inclusion with Technology Global Summit. I certainly really enjoyed the event today, from hearing ideas on education through to protection of red squirrels in the UK and the Darwin fox in Chile. I would like to thank all of our speakers for your time and for sharing your expertise. We are working with different partners across the globe on multiple projects. Technology is already making a difference all over the world, connecting the unconnected, empowering underserved communities, protecting the planet, and more. We hope more individuals and organizations will join us. With the joint efforts of all stakeholders, we pledge to promote digital inclusion for all and help achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals of digital inclusion for all. No one should be left behind. If you would like to discover more, you can scan this QR code to discover more about Tech4ALL. Thank you for joining us. Until the next time, goodbye.